Joseph Varghese is the founder of SuccessCircles.com. He's a peak performance coach and runs the New York City Power Team. The New York City Power Team holds monthly meetings in New York that have been described as TED Talks meet highly experiential learning and masterminding. I think of Joseph as a connector who helps form communities of forward-thinking achievers. You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast, a show devoted to uncovering the systems and the secrets that set the best apart, where you learn how to take your coaching clients to the next level, while you grow the coaching practice of your dreams. So sit back and relax, or sit up and get excited. Either way, you might want to pay attention. This could be important. Joseph Varghese, it's good to see you, my friend. How are things?
Amazing. It's a beautiful week, gorgeous spring day, and I'm grateful to be alive.
Oh, my goodness. Grateful to have you here at the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. I've known you for a long time. And but for the people that don't know you, and I assume that's at least one or two people listening in today, you have this really cool thing called the Success Circles, SuccessCircles.com. You've also been pretty much single-handedly, as far as I can tell, running the New York City Power Team for quite some time, although your partner in that is Frank Clark, and a mutual friend of ours, and I've been part of that as well over the years. But gosh, you do so much for so many people, and I'm so pleased to have you here to sort of help us and spread the word about what you do and what you have to offer and find out more about that. So I don't know where exactly to start. There's just so much, but let's start at the very beginning. I remember meeting you when you came to a training that I did.
Yep, a Sleight of Mouth training way back in 2002.
2002. Really?
Yes.
All right. So was that the beginning for you? Was that the mid? Where'd you start off in this field?
That was about the point. So prior to that, my last corporate job, managing internet security, AIG, 2001, June, left that world pre 9/11. I lived by the trade centers in Jersey City. 9/11 hits. I watched a lot of TV. I have cable TV, big screen TV. Where focus goes, energy flows. I went down this downward spiral, a lot of just depression, sadness, woe is me, the world sucks, look at all this happening. So many hours of TV per day. And I could see the trade center. I lived by it. I had friends who passed away there too as well. And eventually one day in Hoboken, I went to see my allergist. I actually went to my pharmacist to get my medication. Someone next to me gave me an ounce of hope. And this person told me that you've got this unique voice, your resonance, it's mind-blowing, and it would be a shame to our creator, if you didn't do anything about it. So I explored that. And how I explore that is that I started searching online, found a program called, I think it was Morphe's, one of his channels, download channels, Jonathan Althville, the Irresistible Voice. Kind of listened through it and it made sense. And he was like an opera singer and he was an NLP trainer. He did all these things. I know he's a friend of yours too, as well.
Yes, he's actually been on this podcast previously. So awesome. Jonathan Altfeld, very great.
And I hope he listens to this because we've had him on the Power Team. He's become a good friend of mine since. So it was through the internet that I connected with him initially.
So you downloaded his stuff?
I found, in my former life, I was a internet security expert. So I built firewalls at AIG. So I was a technology expert. I was a process engineer, computer engineer, all that background. So I stopped hackers. That's kind of what I did at AIG. At the same time, when you're in that mode, you're in the computer, you just know how to download things, access things. So I that summer
downloaded Jonathan's stuff.
Yeah, I pirated his stuff exactly in around 2001, as well as a lot of other stuff that I didn't really need. Does this feel good? Is this true confessions? Is this feel like it is true confessions. It is true confessions. It is indeed. Yeah, and that was what I did back then. I mean, it's just what I did spare time. That and watching TV, going down this downward spiral. On a news group on hypnosis. because I was studying hypnosis and Jonathan stuff and so forth. There was an event in New York City, and Jonathan was the main speaker that evening. It was like a Tuesday evening. This group called the Sleepwalkers Club.
Oh yeah, sure.
And I went, I attended it, met these people for real life. Like, people actually meet studying this stuff. This is pretty cool. We're talking, and they're my age, and like, kind of dopey. We were all a little dopey. I was like technical engineer. I stuttered back then also. Like, all these things were happening in my space. And I saw like a glimpse of like possibility. Like, maybe you can break through this stuff. You learn NLP, and I downloaded some Tony Robbins stuff, and I learned the slingshot method, and started seeing like all these shifts happening in my world. I attended one of your workshops too, 2002.
Also sponsored by the Sleepwalkers, if I'm
also sponsored by them too as well. Also, yeah, exactly. And Marco's still a good friend of mine. We still engage, talk. We share similar birthdays. Still a very good friend of mine after all these years. One point, one of my closest friends. Yeah, so that's kind of where it all started, and it's addictive once you get a taste of growth work, of possibility. Once you see, I saw myself as someone who stuttered, who didn't really believe in himself, who had imposter syndrome for many years, and then had a taste of breaking through that. And once you have a taste of that, it's like, what else is next? Like, let me have the whole pie. Let me have this whole smorgasbord. So I worked with you, Sleight of Math workshop. I did a bunch of other things over the years. Eventually came across in your power team as a group. And of course, Ross Lagomina and Carson, leaders at that time. So it just became this like upward spiral, I'd say, versus the downward spiral I was on. And instead of seeing myself atrophying, making stupid decisions over time, I just found myself compounding, and there are breakdowns and there are victories, and eventually life happens and family, and here we are.
Yes. And beautiful, successful wife and 2 children later, and here you are with this. Yeah, that's awesome. So you did a lot of Tony Robbins work as well, I'm assuming?
I did. Yeah, I did. I know you were like a center manager way back in the day with Tony.
Back before I met you, back in the 80s and very early 90s. I was center manager for Tony's organization in New York City.
It was actually through Marco. He connected with another gentleman who had a hypnosis center in New York. This person had a second row ticket at a UPW in Secaucus. This is in 2003. And so that was my first Tony Robbins event, and it was amazing. It was an amazing event, being there in second seat at that event. That's amazing. Connect with the power team. I did some work on landmark education too. There's like a whole bunch of things that started shifting my perspective of life, and it's never been the same.
Cool. And when would you say you got into being a coach? When did coaching start for you?
So I had a taste of being kind of a dating coach for a little bit of time.
Oh,
okay. And this is probably around 2003, 2004. I had a taste of that for a bit of time. So it's something that I wanted to get good at. And I got to help people in New York doing a little bit of that. So that was my first taste of anything as far as coaching goes. I didn't really know coaching existed in the way it did. Of course, meeting you and Jonathan and others in that community as well. And it wasn't until maybe around 2005 when we started the success circles that I got a taste of what it means to be more of a coach and help people that way.
Then let's go there. What is success circles? Tell people what that is.
The Success Circle is an accountability advisory board community for entrepreneurs. It's where entrepreneurs help each other, and we have a whole peer coaching element component to it. It is accountability, integrates time management, it integrates gamification, the idea that every day is a game. Every game has 4 quarters. So Q1 is from 7 to 12. When we see life as being a game, when you see the day in front of you as being a game, it allows us to engage fun play toward winning this game. And tomorrow is a whole new game. So we release attachment in the previous game. So it's a peer coaching community that embraces the idea the life, work, play is all a game.
So peer coaching means that you pair people up and they coach each other? Is that what that means?
They have a one-on-one call each day for 2 weeks at a time. It's a huddle. Like every sport, every game has a huddle. So at the start of their huddle, they basically reflect on the previous game, the previous day.
With one person or with a group of people?
One-on-one.
Okay.
One-on-one. And it takes a lot of work. So basically every 2 weeks, we spend a lot of time, the whole day, pairing people together. It's a lot of work. And it's matching personalities, matching backgrounds, looking at where people are, who's ahead of what that person. It's a peer coaching process. We call it a huddle because every sporting event has a huddle.
Right.
So we invite members to have the huddle to start their day. At the end of their day, we invite them to journal. Going back in time to 2002, what got me out of this downward spiral of watching TV, making stupid decisions, other than attending these workshops with you and Jonathan and so forth, I started journaling. For Tony Robbins' CD Insight, he talks about Personal Power 2, talks about power questions. He talks about raising standards. I wasn't raising my standards. I was making very stupid decisions, like on an ongoing basis, downloading crap off the internet, watching way too much TV, wasting time, going down a path where I'd be completely broke at some point because I had like 30,000 in my account. That was diminishing. and when I started journaling, started focusing on winning, things started shifting. And then when I added this other aspect of dialogue, having two people on a playing field, having a buddy call or a daily huddle where they now share these answers with one another and give each other 2-3 minutes laser feedback, things started elevating at a higher level because now there's feedback. Now I'm pushed to now share these things. And now I'm rewiring my reticular system further. So it's not just about journaling these things. Where am I raising standards? Where am I contributing? Where am I growing? It is now sharing these answers with someone else, perhaps impacting them from kind of my process mastery, their process mastery, osmosis in this conversation, being very authentic, real with what we're dealing with. And over the course of 2 weeks, we're both elevating. So the idea is making 1% progress per day. And that's what Success Circles is, a peer coaching community that we started in 2005 after Tony's event called Day with Destiny. That was the starting point of the event, 2005, December.
When you say we started it, you and...
So a bunch of us who attended that event, Day with Destiny, we invested a lot for this event, 5,000-6,000. We knew our purpose. They looked at me, they're like, hey, you're like an engineer guy. You must know something about this. Or at least you're structured. I did have a lot of structure in my life because I thought in terms of process. So I put something together and I buddied people together and like, hey, these are the questions I've been journaling for years. Maybe we can just share these questions. I've been doing this for three and a half years now at this point. It helps me. And what if we, on this call, we share our why or we share our purpose every day? Let's see what happens. Every Power Team meeting, we would meet before Power Team meeting and we'd meet together at the Cozy Cafe next to Seafarers. And we would get together. How are you doing? We're making progress. The next month we're like, how are you doing? How's it going as far as, are you still on purpose? Was that event worthwhile? Yeah. We're making progress. And eventually it took Michael Gerber in 2008, going to an event with him, to have him see that I had created something unique that involved accountability. And he challenged me to brand it, which I did.
Really?
Yeah.
Michael Gerber. Cool. Let me just stop you just for folks that aren't catching all the things you're coming in. I'm sure I'm not catching all the things you're
yeah. Of course. And there's a whole lot there and there's a lot of meat. There's a lot of stories and 15,000 hours toward developing a lot of this. So of course.
So those of you who don't know some of the references, he was talking about the reticular activating system, which is a part of your brain that if you say, as an example, buy a new car that you've never had before, suddenly you're going to see that car everywhere. Everybody's going to be driving the same car. It's like, hey, well, there's one. Hey, there's one. Because your part of your brain notices those things that you deem to be important, deemed to be unique or whatever. So it's a way of getting that part of your brain to be noticing the things that you want it to be noticing and lead you in a direction where you go, as they say, where your focus, how's it saying go? Where focus
goes, energy flows. That's what Tony says. I think Napoleon Hill says where attention goes, energy flows. Where I say is where focus and intention goes, energy flows, because it is also about our intention, how we show up, our intentionality in things, energy flows.
And you also mentioned that when you would have this group of people that you would meet before the power team. The power team would have these meetings where they'd have speakers like I've spoken
like yourself.
Yeah, a number of people would come in, and sometimes they'd be Tony Robbins folks, sometimes they'd be other folks entirely. But you had these wonderful meetings that were essentially free. You asked for a donation, I think, to cover the cost of the room rental. But it's a great thing that that you did and have been doing for years.
Well, and back then I was a student. So I was attending and there's no meetup group. Every month was 100 people sitting in a room, learning from yourself or other great speakers, authorities. Mm-hmm. As you said, it was free and it was addictive. People would drive hours to go to this thing.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Really phenomenal. And you mentioned the Seafarers. That was one of the locations where you would have these meetings. There's a hotel in New York City. So, and Cozy, if you don't know, it's a chain, but there's a lot of them in New York City. So people they'd meet there before the power team meetings. So I just wanted to let people in. Not everybody is a New Yorker, Joseph.
That's true, right? And sometimes what I realized too, as in NLP training, is when you lose someone in one concept, they kind of throw everything else too as well. Also, it's the baby with the bathwater, which I shouldn't let my son hear that because he's still kind of a baby.
Yeah. Just kidding, just an expression, honey.
Exactly.
Because as we record this, Joseph's 2 children are upstairs from him, and one of them is 3.
My son's 2.5. He'll be 3 in December.
It's going to be 3 in December.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Very cool. Neat. So, wow. So Michael Gerber wrote the book, The EMyth. I've mentioned that a couple of times on this podcast in different episodes. EMyth stands for the entrepreneurial myth. That's what E stands for in the title. And what he talks about in that book is that it's a myth that if you start your own business that you are automatically an entrepreneur. He says mostly you're an overworked technician, that being an entrepreneur is about building systems. So I think it's pretty awesome that you went to a seminar of his and he saw what you've been doing with Success Circles and said, oh my goodness, you've got something really unique here. You need to brand it.
Yes. Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
That's exactly right.
From the guy himself.
Yes.
So what happened after that?
Took my time to brand it. I had the domain Success Circles. So back in the days, I worked with an organization called Speaking Circles. Also, thanks to Marco. Marco's been a huge influence for me. He mentioned Speaking Circles because I used to stutter way back. And Speaking Circles, speakingcircles.com, Lee Glickstein is the founder. It's a community of people. They meet together in a circle where there's a facilitator. And the facilitator invites each participant to deliver a talk for 3-4 minutes with loving, gliding eyes, connecting with each person. And that work impacted me because it helped me break out of my stutter. So Success Circles, the domain, was available. I acquired it, fortunately, and it was a good decision back then. It just made sense. And after working with Michael Gerber, that event, I branded it Success Circles. It took me a little time to actually do much with it. I had it. I built a site, a basic site of it. It wasn't until 2009, and now the conversation gets a little sad with what I'm going to say next. Uh-oh. So the power team, the way it was with Ross and Carson, it kind of broke apart a bit. Carson had an event in upstate New York, which you might have been at, perhaps, called Power Mastery.
No, I didn't find that one.
He had Jarek Robbins. He had all these great speakers. A buddy of mine, Larry Benet. He had just exceptional leaders he brought to this event. It was at a YMCA. He had a 20, 30 person audience there. And I was attending this event with an ex-girlfriend of mine, a girlfriend of mine at the time. And we would go in and out of this event. I had the opportunity at this event to speak on stage talking about Success Circles. And because I was in and out of the event, it wasn't until the end of the event where I approached Carson, hey, you're in Success Circles, you're in the buddy program. Would you mind if I get up on stage and give people, talk about this thing we're doing with Focus and maybe hand out these flyers that I printed out? It's late in the game. I was in and out of the event. I wasn't fully in integrity of the event. Mm-hmm. At that event, there was a young woman, Emily Selvage was her name. She was there with her mother, Sheila. Emily, charismatic. We had several conversations at this event. Top of the world. She was an EMT. She was in real estate with her mom. She jumped out of planes, like skydiving, into all these things. Most charismatic, vivacious person at this event. And the event ended. So 3 days goes by. And next thing I do, I'm logging to Facebook, and Emily's mom is like, has anyone seen Emily? We haven't seen her anywhere. She hasn't been around for 2 days. And hours go by and they find her body.
Oh, no.
So she locked herself up into a home and she took her life.
Oh, my God.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
It's very sad. And it affected me because it occurred to me that if I had given her this free trial or talked about what we're doing and she got a chance to buddy up with someone in the community, maybe my girlfriend at the time, maybe she would have seen possibility. Maybe she might have embraced her why. Maybe something would have shifted. Where focus goes, energy flows. I certainly was on a downward spiral at some point in my life, years before that. It's no accident that same month, June 2009, at the next parity meeting, which Ross Lagamino led, where it was like a circle of us, as I talked about what I was doing, I had my first paying customer at that event. Eric Goldstein was his name. We had a circle of people at this parity event. I remember very, very distinctly, and shared what I was doing, more passionately, more fervor now, because I was committed to now take this further, being that I couldn't help Emily. He signed up. Next month, his best friend Paul Rosano signed up. The next month, Sharek Khan, it started growing. Then Ellen Reach signed up, and then it just started taking a life of its own. However, it took the pain of losing someone for me to get out of my comfort zone to really embrace what it was. And then, so that's kind of the birth of Success Circles, even though we were around for about 4 years before that, 3-4 years before that.
Wow. Yeah. It's quite a story, Joseph. Thank you.
It is very intense, and it is very sad. And I actually spoke to Emily's mom, a couple of years ago, just to connect to see how things were. And I got more depth to what she was dealing with. And, it's people deal with crises. People deal with challenges. People deal with depression, clinical depression. The woman I was dating at that, who was in with me at that camp, she had clinical depression. People deal with things, and we have no idea what they're dealing with. And you're, of course, a master therapist. You coach people at levels, deciphering what they're dealing with in a way that helps them go beyond with all the technologies that you have, NLP, havening, and much more. And people need help, and I can't help everyone, but I can help. We track people these days who are more entrepreneurs, who have traction, who want to get more traction with their business. So we tend to track more peak performance people these days. We're all athletes playing field of life. How do we're managing energy, like the whole idea of the powerful engagement. We embrace a lot of those ideas of what we do. The communities evolved, the programs evolved quite a bit over these past 10, 12 years since. And I love it. I love what I do. And through COVID, we've helped more people. We've kind of grown 50%. That's where we're at.
So do you do any one-on-one coaching of your own? Are you a coach for certain people one-on-one?
So I coach more around automation systems, process mastery.
What do you mean?
When I met with Michael Gerber, I approached him about another brand that I was working on called Process to Profit. And I was like, well, I have this engineering background on process mastery. I know how to automate things. I know how to create systems and so forth. And when I work with him, he's like, well, your why doesn't connect with this at all. So he challenged me to build Success Circles. But I had process of profit in my background. So a lot of my coaching these days has to do with helping people with outsourcing solutions, streamlining systems. It could be around marketing. It could be around other things. It's something I'm good at. The reason why Success Circles exists is I'm a simplifier. I took a lot of these concepts around coaching, around playing games in a way that helps people make progress on a regular basis. I don't necessarily coach in the community. I do coach around time management, productivity, anything that I want to learn myself. I'll bring some mastery to it and I'll teach people in our community. And you can say, yes, I'm a coach around that. And I've led sessions with the power team around, winning the game of life. I'll talk about that. I help people, coach people around that. But it's not necessarily to the level of coaching that you do. I mean, what you do is very unique and extraordinary. What I do is more around peak performance, seeing life as being a game, and helping people build structures that are in alignment of them winning that game. And if they choose to, they can participate in success circles too as well, where they get a buddy and so forth.
A lot of our listeners, I'm assuming, although I actually don't know who those people can listen to this anytime they want to. So, but I my avatar in my head is that people who listen to this recordings, this podcast, are people who are coaches or who are striving to be coaches or are making the transition into coaching as a profession. The reason it's called Essential Coaching Skills Podcast is because for those listeners, I would like to provide some coaching, some information, some ideas about what it would take to be a great coach, to be a successful coach. So
Yes.
I'm just curious if, from your point of view, what goes into coaching? What sets the best apart? What is what makes a really great coach? What is an essential coaching skill?
The most important skill is how we listen to people, listening to people for their greatness, like what's behind what they're saying. And that's important. And then
listening for their greatness,
basically subjugating our egos. So we're able to listen to what there is that they're committed to, listening for their why. So in a buddy call, for example, or in a conversation, I'll ask people, well, what's your why? What's your driver? What drives you? Why are you out to succeed? So I listen to them for that in the background. Like I listen to that. That's what I hear as I support them. Or perhaps on a peer coaching buddy call, I will listen to my buddy for all the things that she's committed to, right? Their why. So for me, my why is family, generational health, wealth, leadership, giving my wife 2022 off so we can potentially have another child. I share that why each day. So the people who engage me, my peer coaches, they will have it in their background so they can hold me to account on that. Because we have an accountability system. Success Circles is an accountability system. We don't use the word accountability that often. We talk about momentum, 1% progress per day. So the first thing that's important is how we listen to people. That's key. So basically, subjugating our egos, letting go of our egos so we can listen to people, getting ourselves out of the way. Because this is an accountability relationship. And the more I can hold my buddy or you accountable, the more likely they will hold me to account as well.
Okay, cool.
We have a whole different framework around accountability versus how people perceive accountability. It's very, very different. I could talk about that. So the most important thing is how we listen. And then there's a repository of questions that we offer people that change each day. Those questions are meaningful, and the questions are specific to how we listen to that person.
Could you give us an example of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, one question would be, so what's important to me is a question that I like being asked quite a bit, particularly because I can do anything and everything as a process engineer, is how are you focusing on your zone of genius while leveraging the rest?
Say that again. How are you focusing on your zone of genius?
How are you focusing on the things you're good at while you're creating team, having people help you? That's something that's important to me. When people ask me that question, it gets me out of having to do everything, and it invites me to hire people, build team out, and so forth. And that's very important to me. Another question is, what are you not seeing in the situation? I feel we're all blind in some way, some form. When we're asked that question, we have to go deep inside and like, well, what am I not seeing? Well, you're right. I'm not seeing a lot. Another question I like being asked is, what are you tolerating? Especially during spring season. It's so important to release, to simplify. It's opportunities for spring clean. So I love being asked that question. Sometimes you go back and forth. Well, what are you tolerating? What are you tolerating? It's useful because it shifts our focus toward looking at the things that we're getting numb to in life, to getting unnumbed from those things, and then eventually having a structure toward dealing with those things. I had a call 2 hours ago. My friend Rochelle was on that call. We do a group huddle each day. And she shared that she spent a couple of hours releasing things that morning. In that call, I took my camera, my computer, the same camera. I basically turned it over. You inspired me. I'm going to invest the next 15 minutes. I'm going to clear up this whole area behind me. And I'm going to send you photos before and after. And I did.
Cool.
So, but it comes out of that question. What are you going to release? What are you tolerating? So these questions shift each day. It's also repository questions people can choose from based on their rapport with their buddy. It all comes down to rapport. If there's no rapport, then they really can't go that deep. It's basically 20 to 30 minute huddle each day. And the intention is making today 1% better than yesterday. Over time, as we do that, make tomorrow's game better than today's game, the next day's game better than tomorrow's game. We've tapped into what we all know is compound growth.
Nice. That's beautiful. So it sounds like you've really systematized some of these concepts, like Tony Robbins' Kanai of the constant and never-ending improvement.
Yes.
But you've sort of like, well, let's make a system out of that. That's how do we bring this into reality? So not just a concept, not just a saying, but how do you do this on a daily basis? So a daily touch-in with somebody where you ask what they're doing and you have that accountability and you look for 1% improvement. I think that's great.
And it's feedback. And as you mentioned, It's all Kanai. Kanai is going to Kaizen, the Kaizen approach, right, that brought to Japan around systems processing, making 1% progress, 1% improvement. Months ago, I set up I have a survey called caniimprove.com.
Oh, nice.
Where if I lead a session on Clubhouse or lead a session on any platform, I can get anonymous feedback right away. Like someone can leave me 30 seconds feedback, or even on this session here, you and I have, someone can leave me anonymous feedback. It might take them 20 seconds to give me some input. But that input's useful. If I hear multiple people giving me that same input, saying the same thing, it's probably worthwhile to optimize, to resolve things such that the next time I do this, I can be 1% better or a little more. So it's all feedback that we're getting, and I'm learning. There's a lot of, we can either live deja vu lives, the nature of insanity, doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results, or we can optimize, innovate, and be better. And I just choose that option because we're all getting older. Our muscles are atrophying, and it's important that we find some way to deal with atrophy. And of course, the most important muscle, I believe, is the two muscles I believe are important: our mind and our heart. Something else I haven't shared before, also I started sharing about recently, is my mom had a heart transplant 25 years ago, 1996. I was a senior in college, graduating from college. As she had her heart transplant, her physicians diagnosed her with the same condition she had. It's called idiopathic cardiomyopathy. Right. So they gave me, I know I'm adding other levels to this conversation too as well, but this is related to the nature of Kanai, because it explained a number of things I was dealing with throughout high school. Because when I was in high school, I had these fainting spells. I was in a track team. I had to quit the track team because I was having these fainting spells. I would just faint behind. I would almost fall down. I'd have to sit down. If I didn't, then I would collapse. Wow. And I trained myself to become an athlete through high school because I found the more athletic I could be, these symptoms, the swelling in my feet, all these things would go away. Such that when I got to college, I didn't have as many symptoms as all. I was able to be in the fencing team. But it provided clarity in something, and also gave me a vision that her cardiologist, her transplant cardiologist, who I work with for the next 7-8 years, he gave me some optics that in 40 years, if I don't deal with this, my health, my situation, my habits, I might have a transplant myself. So knowing that, and my dad had a stroke too. He passed away of a stroke in 2004. Knowing these factors, knowing that heart disease is in my family, committing myself to not have that, I embraced the compound effect, or Kanai, as we talk about it, making 1% progress each day. And I got very healthy, like beyond healthy, like green tea, just taking CoQ10, fish oil, exercise, emotional clearing work, you name it. Yeah. I no longer have this condition. So when we last saw my cardiologist, Dr. Alan Gass, Westchester, 2013, with my wife, who's a physician, you've done the impossible. You no longer have this condition. Like, we don't know how you did this. We saw his colleague 2 years ago, Stephen Schwartz, Dr. Schwartz in Astoria. Yeah. No longer have it, completely eradicated it. Wow. Compound growth. So 1% progress each day can shift anything and everything, our minds, our bodies, anything. We all know this, but do we have a do we have a framework toward testing these things out on a daily basis? So my life has been an experiment. I used to stutter 20 years ago. I don't stutter anymore. I'm constantly innovating. My headset here, I have headphones that go into my ears. So if I do stutter, I can catch myself because I can hear myself amplified. That came from feedback from Jonathan Alfeld from one of his workshops I attended 10 years ago. He gave me that idea of listening to myself amplified. So it's all getting feedback, constant feedback, innovating, optimizing. So my life is an experiment, and my life is a laboratory. And I invite people to embrace that idea for themselves too, because if we don't, then all things atrophy. We get older, we get dumber, we get all these things happen, we get weaker, or we can go through life being more fulfilled, being stronger and better.
Yes, indeed. It's curious. My dad also died of a heart attack when I was 21.
Wow.
And like you, I decided, well, I'm not doing that. So much of my life has actually been like doing the opposite of what Dad, did as an example. Yeah. And I took up running, and soon after college, graduated, actually during college, I guess, but took it up more seriously after Dad died, and I ended up running like 18 marathons over the years and stuff.
Wow.
So yeah, and I don't have a cardiologist to tell me if I've overcome anything particularly, but I, like you, also take, CoQ10 and fish oils, and I'm very, very careful about diet and exercise and sleep and all those things. I take very, very good care of myself. And yeah, it's true. We do get older. We do atrophy. I mean, those things are realities. I have come to embrace that one of the really genius prayers in the world is the Serenity Prayer.
I have it in front of me.
You have it right for there you go.
God grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Yeah. It actually came from a book in the Strand bookstore that I purchased, and I have it in front of me all the time.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you've gotten over your stealing ways.
Yeah, I stopped. For me, it's all integrity. There's a definition for integrity that shifted my life years ago that came from doing the forum. And that definition is honoring our words as if our words have deep meaning. But they added a second component to that, which changed my life. That component is living into an empowering context.
Living into
an empowering context.
An empowering context.
And what I interpret that to mean, I have it on my wall over here too as well, that sign. What I interpret that to mean for me is if I don't wake up and do the work to be empowered, I'm out of integrity. So Success Circles has been a means toward supporting myself and hundreds of other people toward being in integrity, to honor the words we say with deep meaning, and also to get in dialogue, to get out of monologue, to get in dialogue in a way where we get to set our intentions, set our why, share our gratitude, get feedback so that we can choose to become empowered.
Beautiful.
That's something I want to share.
Yeah, it's nice. Thank you so much. Hey, second question I often ask people on these podcasts is, what would be an essential skill, do you think, for a person to be successful business-wise as a coach? Because they're sometimes two different things. To be a good coach is one thing, but to make money at doing it, to have a viable business income from being a coach is another thing entirely. So do you have any advice?
Yeah, a lot of advice. And this is actually coming through some training I've been involved with the past year. And it's attracting clients who can afford that service. That's a big thing. And I wasn't always doing that. Sometimes I was attracting people who were trying to make it, let's say, versus people who could afford my services. So the people I track now these days tend to be people who can afford it. And that's probably one thing. I'm reaching out to associations.
How do you do that?
We're reaching out to associations, creating partnerships with associations, providing them access to see that our buddy program can help minimize attrition, maintain retention. So it's basically embracing leverage at a high level, engaging people who are resourceful and abundant already, where they see our services being a viable solution to their organizations and their structure. That's what I've been doing. So it's basically having high leverage conversations with people, presenting to them our business model as an opportunity for them to increase their membership and grow their membership. And I feel if we do that, if we're willing to have those high leverage conversations, we can get anywhere we want. And people often, where I was stuck with for years is I was having these one-on-one conversations. And like, oh, well, do you know someone? Or I'd ask for referrals. I got referrals from my clients, from people in success circles, or their family, their friends. It was good, but we only grew to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. Now we're kind of compounding, specifically because we're reaching out to associations. And there are thousands of associations out there. There's a website called, Frank actually told me about a website a few weeks ago called the directory of associations.com. It's got associations. I called the Mankind Project like 3 weeks ago, and I spoke to a leader there, and it's connecting with someone else. And we're in conversation to bring success circles into that organization. But it took two conversations. So it's just having high leverage conversations, engaging people and providing them a resource that'll support their members. That's probably one of the greatest things we can do, easiest things we can do.
And how would an individual do that for themselves? If a person was like, say, starting off just as a coach on their own, just them, not an organization, but just them, how would they have a high level conversation?
I think group coaching, providing services where they help people, building case studies, and then from there having a brand, and then creating a presentation, going to an organization and having a presentation on something I just mentioned. For example, rebranding Process to Profit as a means to help organizations with retention. And it's basically creating a seminar or a talk where you can go to these organizations where now, as you share value, so in your case, NLP, havening, talking about perhaps, depression and things employees deal with, giving them access to something of that sort. And then, by the way, we have this as a service. We do this as a group. It's providing value first, essentially. That's what we do.
So your advice, just to summarize, would be to have a presentation or talk, something that you can basically give away that is of value.
Yes.
And then it puts you in front of these people that you can also say, and by the way, we have this as a service if you want to go further with this.
Just like as we've done with the Power Team before, you've spoken with the Power Team on all these topics. And hopefully some of that helped toward bringing new clientele on board as well. So let
me ask you a question. So Power Teams, will they be continuing?
They are continuing. We are on Clubhouse. We actually own the brand Power Team on Clubhouse, the Club Power Team and Clubhouse. So we're engaging all the Power Teams around the country to actually flow through our Clubhouse brand. We're doing it virtually. We are also in conversation about doing it in person. As you mentioned before, as being the systems guy, I've been a huge catalyst for the Power Team because Frank's been fairly occupied. So we are in conversations in terms of how we could maximize the Power Team and how we can leverage the Power Team on Clubhouse and other platforms. So we are in conversation about that.
Neat.
Yes.
Well, listen, I want to be respectful of your time, and thank you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure to connect with you again.
Thank you. Thank you for being a huge catalyst in my journey here. What I'm aware of is if I hadn't attended your Sleight of Mouth workshop close to 19 years ago, I might not be on this pathway where I am now. It's just, and I invite audience, coaches, whoever's listening to this, that coaching's amazing, right? The ability to connect with people, add value, give them insights to what's in their way is extraordinary, right? And so you've been a coach for me over the years in our conversations and that first workshop and with the Power Team. So I really appreciate who you are and how you show up in the world. And I encourage others to really embrace the essential coaching essentials for themselves too as well.
Thank you very much. It's right back at you, my friend. It's a real joy to see you and what you've become and what you do with the world and what offer to the planet. It's just a beautiful thing. So thank you, Joseph Varghese, and we'll see you online and in the future in person as well.
Awesome. Remember, life's a game. Remember, you win, I win. Let's all win together. When we see life as being a game and play as access to winning that game, it makes all of this enjoyable, including being through COVID. COVID's been miraculous for us. It's been amazing, only because we see it as being a game. And fun and play are access to making this game even more enjoyable. So let's make this game better.
Amen. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you want any more information about today's show, please visit our website at www.essentialcoachingskills.com. Be sure to tune in again next week for our next episode. and discover even more about the systems and the secrets that set the best apart.